Oh, yeah, I have a
sir,
question.
Introduce yourself and...
Yeah, my name is Shakundi Salisbury. Some people know me as Kun Love. But today I'm just speaking as a person that's worked for the city for 20 years. And one of the things I like to hear from the candidates is that, and while we all are addressing the issues of homelessness and the other things that are mentioned here, I haven't heard much to do about how you would manage the up to 14,000 employees that we have. There's several contracts that are out there that, like such as the police contract that has not been ratified. There's several things that are managing, a $5 billion city with 14,000 employees, and all of these ideas are great. But how will you manage people that have worked there for 20 and 30 years who might be resistant to some of your ideas?
All right, Justin Farrell, I don't think you've had a chance to answer a question first this afternoon. Go ahead.
One of the key roles of the mayor is to manage a 11,000 person workforce. And so I think that there are a few key things that the mayor needs to do. One is a commitment to having a workforce that reflects the diversity of our city. And there are a lot of things that looks like. One, making sure that at the leadership level, there is a commitment to diversity. It means doing things like in our hiring practices. I supported the Ban the Box legislation at the state level, but we need to make sure that people have access to job opportunities throughout the city, no matter what the level is. So in our hiring and recruiting practices, and what we're looking at, making sure that we have our hiring people who reflect our community. Number two, I really think from a management perspective, and I think this is around a community activism perspective too, that people really support what they have an opportunity to help build. And the people who are on the front lines in the city really know what is happening on the ground. And it's really important for the person on the top to spend time with people at the front lines, really understanding how they're doing their job, because they know best.
Carrie Moon?
So that's a really good question, because I think the 14,000, if that's the right number, I thought it was lower, employees of the city. Okay, thank you. So they are a national treasure. I think most of the employees of our city want to be part of a great organization that is achieving great results, that are committed to really having a city government that works for the well-being of everybody. So the mayor's job is to be the leader and to identify the vision, identify the goals, lay out the principles, and then invite everybody to be part of figuring out the action plan. Because when we are in this time of flux and transformation, we're all worried. We all don't understand, where is our city headed? Are we going to be welcome here in a year or 2 years? And we need to have a clear vision laid out that people can be part of, and then invite people to be a constructive part of that. And I know that sounds simple, but that is the only way you make good change happen. And I think a different kind of leadership that's not so much about politics and pleasing the wealthy, but is more about the mission of the city, is an essential shift we need to make in the next 4 years.
Mike McGinn?
So when Shakundi asked the question, he talked about people that are resistant to change. And then there are people who are just dying to, take something and run with it and do something innovative. And the challenge for a mayor is to figure out who you're dealing with, and have the judgment between those that just want to keep doing the job the same way because they don't want their life made more difficult, and those who are doing it the same way because they've figured it out, and those who want to make change. So I think that's one of the big challenges. When I was elected mayor, one of the things I did was start meeting with department heads every week, so that we could have that contact. Then we had regular briefings where we brought in people at a lower level to talk to us as well. And you have to try to find out where the innovators are and where the ideas are, and empower them. Shakundi, for example, started a program which took youth that had legal troubles, partnered with Goodwill to get them a GED, and they did work in the parks to take care of it. And by the way, that's a challenge to get through the system, because the unions only want certain people to do it. And I remember I showed up and I was like, this is a great program, Shakundi. And he went, yeah, you told me to do it. He asked me one day what I thought about that program, and then he just went around the city saying, hey, the mayor wants this program. And that's the truth. So you have to figure out and reward and empower the innovators. You got to understand who's not doing the work and who's just resistant to change for no good reason. And trust me, I made my mistakes in figuring that out along the way too, but spent 4 years working on that.
Okay. Bob Hasegawa.
Yes, so my background is I have successfully managed transformational or organizational change in a multi-million-dollar organization. Running the city, see, I have been a union organizer, and I really do believe that if you want to figure out how to solve a problem, talk with the workers that are working on that problem on a daily basis. A lot of the problems with management that you're talking about, or the brother was asking about, is in conveying the vision to leadership who are managing the workers. But there is so many layers of bureaucracy there now that vision gets muddled on the way to the workers, because I think that the workers really buy into the vision if that vision is clearly conveyed. So you have to surround yourself with people who share that same vision and are competent administrators to make sure that that vision is getting to the frontline workers. But the workers themselves, they just want to do a good job and accomplish whatever that vision is. So I fully believe in that.
Okay. Nikki?
Result, that creates a sense of resentment. And so what I believe is we need a mayor who will listen first, who will take direction for folks who have been in our city for 20 years, and then because that creates buy-in, and then we'll develop a vision with our folks in the city that is about race and social justice, because that's who we say we are. And then I think the third component of that, after buy-in, vision, is opportunity. You can't give people a task to do and then not give them the resources and the bandwidth to do it. And I see a lot of folks in our city who are held on a very tight leash with very limited resources who want to do a great job. So I believe we need a lead listener who will create buy-in, vision, and opportunity.
Okay. Ginny Durkin?
I think that there has to be a clear vision and clear leadership set from the mayor. And when I was honored enough to serve as President Obama's U.S. attorney here, it was civil service, everyone stayed in place. And the two things I heard most frequently was, we never do it that way, and we've always done it this way. And so I think that we have to make sure that every part of the government understands that their mission is to do the good work for the city of Seattle. And it has to start and it has to go up and down the organization. And I think that that has to start from the mayor, but then you hire really good people and let them do their jobs. You can't micromanage, and you have to listen to those people, as Nikita has said, who have worked there for years, who might know exactly how to get things done. But they're hamstringed because it's not exactly the right way or in exactly the right time. But at the bottom line is leadership has to come, a leadership and vision, and then you have to hold people accountable. And they have to make sure that each of their, whether it's SDOT or public utilities, that they are interfacing with the city and making sure that they are there to serve people and get things done.
Vivian, your question?
Sure. I am fortunate enough to be a Central Area homeowner. And in case you all haven't noticed, small businesses are not a problem. There are lots of small businesses in the Central Area. They're just not owned by Black people. So they're growing. It's not a problem. But the question I really want to pose is that every time we talk about Black wealth and the generation of wealth, we start to go immediately to minority business, small business. Minority is a deficit way of looking at it first and foremost because the root word is minor. I don't like that. What are you all going to do about establishing a sense of equality and equity as it relates to big business?
Carrie Moon, why don't you take that first?
So do you mean more the corporate chains or the big employers like Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook, or both?
Yes.
Okay. So this is fascinating to me because I grew up in a small business family where we were committed to the well-being of everyone. We shared all the profits, all the decision-making happened on the shop floor. It was partly owned by the employees. It was rated the best place to work in the state of Michigan of all the thousands of companies there because we were committed to the well-being of everyone. And what happened to that culture? That culture is the opposite now in our corporate America. And it's being taught in business schools that the only the only master to serve is the shareholder, and it is exactly the wrong way to do it. So we need to establish a different culture in Seattle and in our business schools here, and talk about how do we use enterprise to create wealth, to create well-being for everybody, including the employees, and establish a new way of doing things and a new set of principles, and invite all of our corporations to be part of that.
Mike McGinn?
Yeah, I don't like the term either, particularly when you look at demographically where the country's going. You know, there will be the majority of people will be people of color in this country, and not too long a time. So that's important. It's stuck in the middle, though, of the name of the contracting that we do. I think the city just needs to look. The challenge is that we have all of these processes which attempt to be, you know, colorblind, right? Our land use permits or anything we do, and you can't be because history hasn't been, and history is with us today, you know, and all of these issues around wealth. We're talking about decades of inequitable practices that has led us here. I think that we have to look at really being intentional and leveraging city resources at every opportunity when we do this to recognize, you know, the historical injustice and work to remedy it. And, you know, that's the challenge, is the one that Essex asked me earlier. Can you really change that? Because there's power on the other side that wants it to run that way. And, you know, we just got to keep working it.
Bob Pascal?
So, as a state senator, I just want to clarify something, because minority business enterprise is a term that's defined in the RCW. So what I've done every year is convene a legislative forum of disadvantaged business enterprises and minority business enterprises to talk about what are the legislative solutions or initiatives that they'd like to see prior to every legislative session, and then we've tried to move that. I agree. The term minority does have that negative or inferior, quote unquote, connotation to it, as opposed to a superior connotation. So if it needs to be changed, we should do that in the statute. But as a term of art, I don't know which term you actually prefer, but getting to your fundamental question is, how are we going to hold big corporations accountable to equitable distribution of their contracting opportunities, or with regard to? So there are, you know, the community, small business of color community have been looking at a different strategy recently, which is to take that Title VI Civil Rights Act approach on discrimination and looking at that as a way to get around the I-200 bar. There's legal ways of approaching, I mean, filing lawsuits, you know, the classic discrimination stuff. How do you get them to hold, you know, the corporations
I should wrap you up here because you're beyond a minute. But
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That's like the $64,000 question, right?
Yeah. Nikita Oliver.
I think the answer is we start with ourselves. The city discriminates exactly the same way these corporations do. There are lots of ways in which black folks, and I want to talk about black folks specifically because we always get lumped in with people of color, that we get pushed out of from getting access to city jobs even. So it's not just about corporations. It is a whole system that's been set up to discriminate, to say if you have a record, and how easy is it for us to get a record? If you don't have a degree, how hard is it for us to get a degree? If you don't have this experience or this relationship. So it's about transforming the system. So I think first, the city has to transform our relationship with black community and who gets jobs within the city. I think the second is we have an Office of Civil Rights that should be far more empowered, should be an independent office. And when discrimination occurs, people should have better access to accountability and enforcement. We have laws that have gone into place, but there's no enforcement of those ordinances in the city that's actually effective. And then I think the third thing is the city can refuse to work with organizations and corporations that are unwilling to truly put in place initiatives that will transform their workforce.
Jenny Durkin.
you have to take systemic steps if you're ever going to come close to changing the systemic racism. And the first thing you have to do is be honest about the causes of it and not pretend it's gotten better for generations, because it hasn't. And then the city has to do, as a mayor, you realize that on every level, from hiring to opportunities to spending billions of dollars, it has to be through the lens of equity and not equality. Equality assumes that we all start from the same spot, which we know isn't true. It has to be from equity. And so it has to permeate how you hire people, how you reach out, and also how you dole out the dollars. And again, I'll go back to I-200. Since I-200 was passed, the share that businesses owned by people of color went from approximately a third, 30%, to less than 1%. That's outrageous. It doesn't have to happen, and I think a mayor has to ensure that everyone that they do business with make sure that part of their hiring, part of the money they're doing, they're subcontracting, and what you're looking for is the primes too. You've got to reverse that trend so it can be fair.
Justin Farrell.
So I think one of the big issues around this question is that there's been a massive amount of corporate wealth that's been generated in this city, and that the real question then is how does the African American community access that wealth? And I think that there are three specific things the city can do. Number one, taxes, making sure that we're taxing developers, having impact fees that go back into the community around school facilities, around transportation investments, and using equity as a lens for that. Number two, making sure that Black youth have access to those jobs. You know, it really matters when kids don't have access to unpaid internships because they can't afford it, for example. So making sure that we're working with our corporations to provide access and training and opportunities so that the jobs that bring great wealth through the tech sector, the global health community, people have access to those. And then number three, I think the issue is around, Nikita talked about the city not doing business with those corporations that don't have fair practices, but I would also argue that don't have diverse boards at the very top where wealth truly is generated and where that wealth tends to stay. So I would look not just at their hiring practice, but at the very top.
Let me apologize to those of you who are waiting to ask questions. The organizers have asked me to wrap it up here because we're pretty far over our time. But let me not wrap up without asking all of you to thank our candidates. Thanks, everybody.